The biggest thing is you have to reach out to the coaches of the schools you're interested in early. We have our schedules planned at least a couple of days in advance. I know for me, I usually tried to wait until the day or 2 days before because we did keep having contact roll in throughout that time frame. But once they're at that event, it's really difficult to try to retweak the schedule to make it work. I mean, we're talking about some tournaments where there are, over 30, 40 fields at across different locations within the state. I think that's something that is so important that you make sure that you're reaching out early and maybe even checking in a second time to make sure that they've gotten that information from you. You've got to be able to be proactive. I would balance my schedule based on who had contacted me, and then the rest was identification. So if I had a list of 30 to 40 kids that reached out to me before a tournament, I was doing everything in my power to see those 30 to 40 student athletes because they indicated that they were interested in our program, barring that they sent me a mass BCC email. Don't do that either. But if it was a personalized email that came directly to me with interest in our programs, I was doing everything I could to see that player. And then if there were players on both teams that were having really good games, I'd write them down and try to reach out to them after the fact. But I think the biggest thing is making sure you're reaching out early, maybe even a couple of times. And in that messaging to that coach, you're telling them exactly what your schedule entails, what times, what fields, what locations, what jersey number you'll be wearing, what color jersey you might be wearing if there's two, if you're a goalkeeper, which half you might be playing in if you split time, because that really does factor in. We're normally not spending more than a half at each field because we're trying to maximize all the time that we're spending. So coaches are on the go. And I think the other thing too, for the team managers out there, bring profile books to the tournaments. When I sit down at a field, when coaches sit down on the field, they want to receive something in hand that has information about each student athlete. Coach Packett obviously does that unbelievably well, but there are some other tournaments that don't have that. If we can have information about each kid on the team, whether or not they're committed, what class they are, that's massive.
And I think I don't want to stay here for a minute because you're bringing up a lot of good points. This is something we talk a lot about. There is this common misconception that, hey, if I go to showcases and camps, I'm guaranteed to be found by college coaches. The right scholarships are going to start falling out of the sky for me. We know that's not true, right? These things are very, very intentional for college coaches. They go there with a game plan. So let's talk about that for a little bit, Pam. Because you had to plan when you were going to go to those events. It's not like the weekend before, you're booking your travel, this and that. You've got a certain, budget for recruiting. You probably have to report that stuff to the athletic director well in advance of when you're actually traveling to the tournaments. What's the process for you, for a college coach, to figure out exactly which tournaments you're going to go to?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I think there are certain tournaments that are pretty much a guarantee, where it's like, these are the big time tournaments where there's going to be a lot of opportunity to see a lot of different players. They're usually the bigger tournaments with more field locations, more fields, more courts, et cetera. You plan for those. And then, I think in addition to that, if you get a lot of contact before the tournament, that might pique an interest in that coach to say, I've gotten reached out to by a few kids for this tournament. It sounds like a good showcase. I'm going to add this to my list. And especially if it's a regional tournament, you can add those a little bit last minute. But the ones where the coaches, if we're talking about, for where I was working on the East Coast, if you're talking about a tournament on the West Coast, I need to know well in advance that you're planning on going to that tournament. I may not need to know your actual schedule, but tell me that you're going and tell me that you're going to be there. And that way I can potentially plan for that moving forward. I think that's a big piece of the puzzle as well. We do plan months in advance for our tournaments. I remember I had a whiteboard in my office and we had every tournament for, 5 months out written down of how we were going to plan our budget and how we were going to make it work.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. Click our logo to subscribe to our channel and check out the other videos on our page for all things recruiting.